So, welcome to the Meaningful Jobs podcast, season three. I'm your host, Adrian, and today we're extremely honored to welcome Rene Lassauzet from Nestle, and he's the head of brand of Nestle. So, how are you doing? Hope you're well.
I'm doing well, Adrian. Thank you for having me.
So, when people think about Nestle, the first thing they can think of, obviously, is the food. And with
Yep.
you being, the head of brand, people must assume that you've got quite a busy role. So, can you start us off by describing a little bit about what you do in Nestle?
So like you said, my name is Rene Lassauzet, and I'm the head of brand and creative, actually, brand and creative excellence. For Nestle in the US. Nestle is globally headquartered in Switzerland, but with presence in virtually every market in the world, and I'm fortunate to lead all things brand and creative for all the brands here at Nestle in the US. I've been at Nestle for 20 years, never worked anywhere else.
Wow,
I
a
joined,
really loyal employee then.
yeah, exactly. I joined straight out of school, and I've been here. I've been here since. And yeah, I think, look, for me, to your point, Nestle. Most people think, which rightfully so, it's food and beverage, right? We are the world's number one food and beverage company in the world, which I like to think is a meaningful responsibility because food and beverage is so intrinsic to our lives, right?
I'm a
Our
big fan
lives.
of Nestle coffee, by the way.
Oh well, I appreciate that. I would say we're pretty good at that.
hmm I just had one actually yesterday. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, I think people are excited to know how you got to where you are. So can
Yep.
you tell us, if you got into marketing, from a young age, or is that something you had to, figure out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so to describe a little bit more my role, it is really hardcore marketing, right? It's really
Yeah.
hard for deep brand and strategy and positioning, and then all through creative development. So all things advertising, which will naturally, most folks in my role, my friends who are peers in equivalent roles, their trade has always been marketing and advertising and publicity and communications and so on. And I happen to be a bit of a professional career accident because my path has been completely different than my funny bit at speaking engagements is that although I'm the head of all things strategy and creative, I'm actually an industrial engineer by
Oh,
background,
wow.
and
So that's completely unrelated.
completely unrelated. And I was 18 and I decided to go into that, and it was a horrible choice, and I hated
hmm
it, but I didn't want to quit. And because I was an industrial engineer, my first job at Nestle was actually in logistics, in distribution. Did that job for about a year and a half. Then they offered me a promotion in procurement, buying process equipment for our factories.
So
And
that's slightly better than your engineering job, I guess.
well, it was still for all the engineering projects, so it was still
Oh,
within
okay.
engineering. And then by a coincidence, I met the folks in consumer insight and market research. And I started talking to them and to understand, oh, what do you do? And they're like, oh, we do this, this, and this. I'm like, that's amazing. All you do is like talk to consumers and figure out what they want. That's got to be super interesting. And they offered me a role,
Hmm.
and I took it, and
Do you have
that's
to
what,
start from the bottom, by the way, like
of
in
course,
marketing? Yeah.
all the way in the bottom, and just then starting to make my way through. And ultimately, when you're a deep insights person, you're more of a brand strategist, which is then what led me towards this path. So at the end, I tell folks, I'm not a marketer. I'm not. I didn't get it from the books. I got it from the streets. I had to learn it the hard way, so to speak. But
Well, being
I'm
being street smart is a better skill, I think,
well.
than book
I
smart, maybe.
Yes, it worked out for me. Let's say that.
Mm. So
Yeah.
at around what age did you have to start all from the bottom again in marketing?
Uh, the good thing is good thing, I guess. It is that I joined Nestle very young. I
Mm.
joined Nestle when I was 24. And the first couple of roles that I had, although they weren't in marketing, I think they allowed me to have, and I was 24, 25, and 26, I think. And I changed to consumer insights when I was 27. So from an age
Okay.
perspective, it was 27. Now, what I do think is that although those roles are peripheral to marketing, when you think about marketing, it isn't just advertising. And when you think it's the entire value chain. And I think some of
Hmm.
the marketers and companies that respect the way they execute marketing, it is truly end-to-end view. So peers from P&G or from Unilever, I think are very knowledgeable of all
Hmm.
these components in the value chain, not just the advertising.
So, after being a marketer, what are some of the biggest challenges that you found, or some of the most, interesting things that you found at
Yeah.
the same time?
Uh, I think ever since I started a path in marketing, every year we say the same thing, which is now sounding cliche, but it's still true. And it's the fact that it's just becoming increasingly more and more and more complex, right?
Hmm.
When you think about the evolution of the industry, it started with a very simple touch point, which was
Yeah.
product packaging and print materials. And that was it. And then radio came along and then made that a little bit more complex. And they mastered that. And then TV came along, and then TV reigned for about 20 years, and it was a very stable marketing and advertising environment. You just need to kind of know those three or four touch points if you include point of sale. And then we had digital explode, and digital like was a massive revolution that had us all like scrambling and figuring out where is it desktop first or mobile first, and the platforms and all these things that would come and go. And we leaned into some formats that went away and some that we missed the train on and so on. And it just keeps going and going and going. And now other emerging themes that have come about, whether it's social responsibility, which is whether it's purpose, whether it's sustainability, whether it's multicultural marketing, whether it's um, uh, influencer marketing, experiential, and so on. Then the 3 years that we just went through in the
Pretty
pandemic.
crazy, right?
So it's wild, right? To be
Yeah.
able to stay in front of all of it. And I think that we're also now with AI um, dropping, we I don't really think we have seen any of it yet, but it does feel for those that are around my age group,
Hmm.
it does feel like it felt at the start of the
The
internet.
internet age, right?
And I think that
Mm.
we're gonna live in a world very soon because it's moving so fast in a world very soon where AI just operates in the background the way the internet works in the background, right? So,
Mhm.
so yeah, I think it's going to be a fascinating next few years, but tough because what it requires is adaptability
Yeah.
and and agility to throw out old ways and old playbooks,
Mm.
and write new ones. And not everybody's up for that.
Do you buy into some sort of prevalent thought that younger people, maybe in their 20s, find it easier to adapt? Or do you think that, as you mature, adaptability is something that, comes along pretty well as well?
I It's a good question. I I don't know that I would agree that it's an age dependent thing.
Mm.
I think that you could you find I'm because I'm an insights person at heart. I'm fascinated by identifying traits that hold people together
Mm.
regardless of demographics. And I think that there is a group of superheroes that have it in their DNA to be adaptable to change and to proactively lean into things and handle ambiguity and handle um, lack of clarity and just lean in and try to figure it out and be prone to action and prone to results. I see people, regardless of age, race, gender, like it doesn't matter. Those that are averse and resistant to change, or proactive to change. And I think it is, that's the promised land. Like when I talk to folks in my team or in leadership and so on, particularly folks in my team that are trying to figure out what the next steps in their career will be, there is a subset of those that I tell them they're all terrain, and they need to be ready. Their best skill is acknowledging that their future role doesn't exist yet,
Mm,
and that they will be able to be there ready to write it, write the script of what that script will be,
mm.
not the ones that are already thinking about a box that currently exists, because then that's likely not going to be the case.
So it seems as if you're suggesting that perhaps there's still some sort of waiting that has to be done, but obviously has to be proactive as well at the same time. But I guess the difficult thing is you don't know what to be proactive about because the future role doesn't exist yet.
I don't know though. I think that
Mm,
there's because waiting, I don't know that I would subscribe to waiting either. I think
mm,
that there's three components that I could articulate are positive virtues, right?
mm,
The first one is people who are able to carry from legacy practices the important components of that and not fully give them up. For me, things like insight, things like strategy, things like consumer understanding, things like foundational brand positioning, those are things like the 4 Ps, right? Those are things that are timeless, and that some people senior in marketing and advertising have lost sight of those things as they
mm,
wrangle execution outlets. So the first third is fundamentals that never change. The second third is the ability to operate in the now,
mm,
and not looking back and not waiting to see what drops, but their ability to drive impact in a volatile environment that we live in today. And then the third is the ones that are starting to try to, the third is those with the ability to look a little bit down the road to see what's coming out around the corner, and not try to guess or fortune tell what will be there, but to set pieces in place that will be better primed to what is most likely to happen, right?
mm,
And be best prepared. So I don't think that you can guess the future. I think that
mm,
you can best prepare for it.
mm.
I think there's folks that make big bets on things that maybe haven't quite materialized. Like, oh, the next big thing is going to be NFTs.
I
The
guess it's a
next
lot
big
in influencer marketing.
the next big thing is going to be the metaverse. The next big
Yeah.
thing, and then you're like, is it really? Maybe, I don't know. But then some commit so hard into some of these things that some may or may not end up materializing. Right? A few years
Mm.
ago, it was augmented reality and virtual reality, and
Yeah, that didn't happen.
that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's not super. It's
It's not
not
a
necessarily
formula, I guess.
yeah, to
Yeah.
fully commit to something quite just yet.
So, you know, talking about your career again, you've
Yep.
been in marketing for over 15 years. So there are many instances where you've had to change. So how
Yep.
do you prepare yourself for these changes and how do you anticipate these based on your past experience?
Yeah. Uh, I'll put it to you this way. I think I have moved around from engineering to logistics to supply chain to consumer insights to advertising to creative. I moved from Mexico City to Switzerland to the US. And I think that change is never easy, no matter what people say.
Mm-hmm.
It's never easy, but it's easier if you do two things. One is if you're fully open to it and really be driven by change rather than resisting change. Eventually, the wave will hit you, and you
Yeah.
can choose either you flow with the wave or not. But if the more open to it and least resistant to it you are, the better you will probably fare out. And the second one is we've always tried, both personally and professionally, with my wife, who's come along on the journey with
Mm-hmm.
me in these moves, is once we decide to take on a change, we jump in with both feet. And you can't like dip your toe in the water and see and try and so on. Like you need to commit to it. And
Can you give us an example about this?
well, I'll put it to you this way. I think, like I said, I've been moving around quite a bit all over the world, and I had the opportunity to be close to a lot of colleagues and friends who were in expatriated circumstances like we were. And I found that the folks that kept were hesitant about making these moves, or that kept, like, they were half excited but half missing home, and they kept going back and they hadn't fully taken on that change. One, they were never really present in maximizing the opportunity in which they were in, therefore not performing at their best, therefore not enjoying it to the full. And they were trying to be in two places at once. So then they kept second guessing their decision. They kept there was this like psychological struggle that they were self-inflicting and dealing with because they hadn't fully committed. So I think that again, um, openness and embracing it for
Mm.
when change comes along to jump on that wave and move, and then jumping with both feet, because you
Yeah.
can't hop on the bus and leaving one foot out. You need to jump in with both.
So, talking about change and Nestle's brand,
Yep.
how would you say it's evolved in the past? And can you tell us if there's a secret sauce which, you know, keeps Nestle fresh as a brand?
Yeah. Nestle is I don't think you get to be the size that we are, and the success that we have, if you're not constantly looking to evolve. And I think
Yeah.
that part of uh, the way I describe those three thirds is very much part of the culture in the company. One,
Yeah.
what are one third, what is the fundamental core values of the company, and particular ways of working and behaviors and practices and categories and so on? What is true to us? Second, how do we adapt to try to be successful in the environment of now? And how do we look down the line of what is likely coming and adapt for the future? So today, if you look at the portfolio of brands that Nestle has, you have brands that have been around for hundreds of years and are still relevant and are still successful and are massive at scale. And you have brands that are very small and very nascent in consumer and market niches that are being built for the future. And I think that is this mix that I think you could argue it's reflected on the culture as well as in the employee body, which is some of us that have been in the company for quite a while and have some of the institutional knowledge and practices and so on, and embracing the energy and the impetus and the agility that some of the staff that is just starting their career is bringing,
Mhm.
and maximizing on the value that is results from the addition of the two.
So, can you give us a sneak peek about the marketing direction that Nestle will be taking in the next few years?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things. I think again, it's a mix of being very truthful to the role we play in people's lives,
Mm.
and the quality and the performance in the categories that we serve, whether it's coffee to pizza to lasagnas to
Yeah.
uh, creamers, and the equity that those brands, because I like to think that we don't own these brands. We operate these brands. Consumers own these brands, right?
Mhm.
It's at the end of the day, the choices they make every time they're in front of the shelf. And
Mhm.
we owe it to them that they see reflected the brand and the product they've come to know and love, and delivering that consistently, time over time over time. We do need to, because food and beverage is both cultural and is habitual. And habits change and culture changes. We need to continue to adapt to what the preferences and needs of people as culture evolves, and things that you see are now much more mainstream that maybe in the past were niche or were just specific to a demographic that now have become completely mainstream, and they're
Mm.
everywhere. And the third one is, as it relates to marketing specifically and how we activate, we talk a lot about relevance,
Mm.
and I think the line I use with the teams is we try to evolve from advertising to engagement, from a world where you're speaking uh, in one way direction to consumers and shouting from the megaphone um, your message, to truly delivering immersive and engaging experiences across touch points. I think
Mm.
some of the things that I've been fascinated by this year and the last couple of years is, for example, the Barbie phenomenon. Barbie
Mm.
is like, it was mind blowing to see
Mhm.
from a marketing perspective. It was a movement. It wasn't a
Mm.
brand activation. It wasn't a movie launch. It was a movement. It was everywhere, and it created so much uh, traction and magnetism across age groups. It wasn't, I have two daughters. It wasn't for my daughters
No.
only necessarily, and they were excited to see it, but my wife was excited to see it, and conversations with friends were referencing the movies. Like it was everywhere. So
Mm.
that's one recent. The other one that is just still out there, like it's been witnessing Taylor Swift's
Yeah.
impact this year in
Well, she's
in a
she's back
world
after
where
10 years, so perhaps that played a part.
yeah, but it's still like when you think about the cultural environment in which we live in, it's a time where we can't seem to agree on anything,
Mm.
and she seems to be the one thing everybody agrees on and everybody likes and everybody's excited about, and so on. So it's
Mhm.
just they're interesting manifestations of marketing
Mm.
uh, that I think we all can learn.
Mm.
So the more we see that uh, brands engage their cohorts in that way, I think the more successful they're likely to be.
So, talk a little bit about joining Nestle. So, if I were somebody who wanted to join Nestle, in the upcoming future, what's your advice and what do you think is, in it for me, with a role
Yep.
in Nestle?
Um, Man, so many things, but I would speak to the ones that have resonated with me over the years. I think, like I said, I've been here for 20 years, never worked anywhere else. And so you could guess that I'm happy.
Yeah, you must like it
Um,
here.
right. And what I would say is it's a mix of a few things. Number one, I love the categories in which we operate, because
Mm.
I think I find a lot of joy and pride when I go home at night. Working is hard, right?
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time of our day and our lives away from family, friends, passion points, whatever, committed to work. So is what you're doing something you take pride in, and is it meaningful? And I find that food and beverage is, because we, in little and small ways, we have the opportunity to make people's lives a little bit better, from the
Yeah.
start of their day with a cup of coffee to the end of their day with a pizza or lasagna and anything in between, versus something that just people might be indifferent to. So that first is, I think that that's something that has resonated with me quite a bit. The second one is, so then for me, that has to do with purpose. The second one is the people and the culture, which I know it's always like every company says, oh, we have the best people, we have the best culture, but I don't know that it's a qualifier. I don't think that there's a best and the worst. It's just a matter of where you feel you fit in, and what are the cultural dynamics of that company, the values and the principles that get you through the door and be energized to be your best. Now, there are companies where the culture is high performance, high achievement oriented, very individual performance driven, and so on, highly compensated, high speed career progression, and so on. And I don't know that would resonate with me, quite frankly. For me, is coming into a place where people appreciate me for who I am, and appreciate my input, and you're held to the both the quality of your performance as well as the quality of your character, and how you engage with others, and your ability to get work done with others, that is meaningful for me. And then the third one is I am a walking, talking example that their possibilities are endless, and that you can start off being a Mexican industrial engineer in logistics, and somehow, after a few years, find your way through Switzerland and in the US, leading brand and creative strategy for billionaire
I guess you
brands.
couldn't have imagined this when you were young.
A zero.
Zero.
And then